Senator Alsobrooks.
Thank you so much, Chair Scott, also Ranking Member Gillibrand. And I'm so grateful to be here today, joined by so many patient advocates, caregivers, family members. I've heard from many Marylanders living with rare diseases and from their families, including dozens who have visited my office this week to share their priorities and their concerns. As I underscored with the NIH director a few weeks ago, patients suffering from devastating diseases do not have time to wait for needless delays to critical cures. For Marylanders with rare diseases, delayed access is not just an inconvenience, it is a matter of life or death. For many with rare conditions, clinical trials are their last and best hope. These patients also depend on a regulatory process that is science-driven and capable of turning research into real treatment. Instead of strengthening those foundations, this administration is constantly disrupting clinical trials, slowing innovation, and undermining the pipeline to cures. Scientific integrity should always guide decision-making, and we must protect the firewall between the Food and Drug Administration and political influence. President Trump and Secretary Kennedy continue to decimate critical parts of that system. The instability they've caused ripples across families, physicians, researchers, and innovators, and patients pay the price. So, Ms. Kennedy, I'd like to ask, over the past 2 weeks, we saw a striking example of political interference at the FDA involving a seasonal mRNA flu vaccine from Moderna. The agency first declined even to review the application, then reversed course just 1 week later after a revised regulatory approach. The abrupt change raised serious concerns about transparency, predictability, and political influence in what should be a scientific process, an episode many have described as regulatory whiplash. What does that kind of volatility signal about how the FDA is functioning right now, and why does that matter for rare disease reviews that depend on regulatory consistency?
So, first of all, thank you so much, Senator, for being here and for all of you being here today and for this important issue. I think first it's important to say that I'm not an expert in vaccines, and I'm here really to focus on rare disease, but I appreciate the question really asking about the trends that we're seeing and us being here really trying to follow the trends and understand what that means for rare disease. I also agree with Dr. O'Neill that we have seen real intention from career staff and staff scientists at FDA around their engagement, but what we're concerned about is, to your question, what seems to be reversals in decisions where there had been previous agreement, previous work with sponsors that was directing sponsors to move in one direction, and then regulatory decisions seem to be yielding different decisions at this point. So as I stated in my testimony, we have seen recently 23 complete response letters issued in rare diseases that are delaying access to the patient community and having devastating consequences to our community. Many of those actually are decisions that are reversals in regulatory agreements that had been made previously. Additionally, we're very concerned that previously, if there were to be a complex decision that needed to be worked through between a sponsor and the agency, an advisory committee would have been convened. And we have seen 65% fewer advisory committees convened in 2025 than 2024, and in fact, none since July. So we're very concerned that the regulatory tools that are at the disposal of the agency to really work through some of these really complex decisions aren't being utilized.
Thank you. And just very quickly, if I can also go to Ms. O'Neill, finding new cures doesn't happen overnight, and it rarely happens in a single year. Breakthrough therapies are built over decades of careful scientific work, and discoveries in NIH-funded laboratories form the foundation for treatments that later move into clinical trials through regulatory review and ultimately into patient care. So when NIH research capacity is disrupted, as we have seen, and weakened, how does that set back the search for new cures long before therapies ever reach the FDA?
Thank you for your question. The NIH is a critical source of funding innovation in this country and scientific innovation. It's interesting that when there were disruptions and uncertainty in the funding, we received a flood of requests about funding from our small nonprofit foundation. And I think nonprofit foundations across the country were seeing that, and we're not equipped to take up all of the preclinical and transformative science that NIH can do. So the role of the NIH in supporting innovation is huge.
Thank you.